And we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. My name is Margaret Pennard. I'm a historical fiction and fantasy author, and we're doing one in a series this month to enable us to finagle an author appearance of a honored friend here, MK Williams. Welcome to the channel.
Hi, thank you so much for having me and for following up with me all the time to make sure when I said I was finally going to be ready, I was ready. I'm really excited to talk with you about the climate and climate fiction today because I write under MK Williams, I write science fiction. Under Mary Kate Williams, I write climate fiction and speculative fiction. And then I do have a new pen name that's going to be coming out next year, Kate Williams, that just writes romance. So I write all over, but I think my voice is the same. You'll feel across like reading my different pen names. So
awesome. And I will let the audience know the series is Truth and Reconciliation for the Climate. I'm using the same initials as the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions across the world because I took my inspiration from those in terms of something that was seriously wrong in our societies that people needed to address in a formalized way. And so this is what I'm doing for the climate crisis this year. And I met MK Williams online through her AuthorTube channel, Amazingness. So I have just finally baptized myself in her fiction. But if you are an author and you are on YouTube, you can definitely check out her channel. It is... There we go. We'll change the little scroller. One MK Williams everywhere on social media. And she's got lovely advice and always does the updates and the fact checking. And it is an amazing resource for indie and TradPub authors, because I think you just queried and got a TradPub deal as well. So tell us a little bit about your author channel and your YouTube. What you were
Yeah, so I started self-publishing a decade ago. We're literally almost up on the 10-year anniversary of my very first book in like a week. And so 2015, I started self-publishing, and I was very fortunate to get a lot of people asking me like, well, how do I do this? And I publish on Amazon, but how do I get the book to Amazon? Or how do I get people to buy the book from not Amazon? And I was spending a lot of my very precious, finite writing time answering questions, and I wanted to help people. I wanted to answer their questions and make it feel personal. And I was like, I know, I'll type out the answer, and then I'll copy paste it to people. And then it still didn't feel personal. I was personalizing it. And I was like, I know, I'll make a YouTube channel. That'll save me time.
Famous last words, goodness.
Famous last words. Yeah. So my whole point of my channel was always quick and easy, to the point answers on topics for self-publishing authors, because we can easily spend so much of our time down the rabbit hole and then the book doesn't get done, it doesn't get published. So I always wanted those short and sweet videos. I do have some longer ones for more strategic topics, but my channel, I tend to still really serve a lot of like first-time authors, even though I've been doing this for so long. And so many of my friends have kind of been like, I don't need your channel anymore. And I'm like, I know, it's fine. It's not for you. It's for first-timers. And
we also have blind spots. And so I'll come in sometimes and be like, oh, this thing for distribution or this thing for audiobooks, like it's in my future and I haven't tackled that aspect yet. And so yeah, you've done so much on so many fronts that it's a super resource. So don't forget to search. Go to MK's channel and search your term that you're curious about, for sure.
Yeah.
So one of the intersecting topics that we're going to address today is that you have talked about climate crisis in some of your fiction, and this series is about how is it affecting us in our lives. So let's just dive in. How did you first become aware of climate change, and when did it fully sink in how risky and dangerous a position that we're in? Your climate crisis origin story.
I think growing up, I was always hearing about we have to take care of the earth, topics of global warming, which has now evolved in terminology to just climate crisis, and just being aware of it. I think moving to Florida, it took me a while. I think my first few years in Florida, we were very lucky and didn't get any hurricanes. Or if we did, it was like a Cat 1 was skirting by, and all my friends who were native Floridians were like, oh yeah, you're fine. We don't worry about it. And I was like, it's a hurricane. They're like, it's a Cat 1. Like, it's fine. It's 100% okay. And that was back in 2010. And then fast forward to the first time we had a Cat 5 coming for us. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And they're like, no, this is a big deal. I was like,
Right. You're like, oh.
now you're very time worried. And so really realizing how dramatic the damage can be and the devastation. And obviously there's so much that's going on elsewhere in the world in different climates and different areas where obviously if you live somewhere where you usually get a lot of snowfall and you're like, we haven't had snow in a couple years. It's just a very different experience. But for me, I think living through some of these hurricanes and just feeling and experiencing the rapid intensification, I'm planning to actually write into a novel what we had to go through this exact time last year. We lost both, we were a bad country song. So Hurricane Helene was 100 miles offshore and flooded our cars, lost our cars in the storm. Lost the house, the other storm. And so we try to live a very minimalist lifestyle. In general, we just try to be good stewards of what we have. We're not excessive consumers and things like that. And so when we lost both cars, we were like, okay, like we've saved for this. It's okay. But we walk out of our condo building and there's a parking lot and every single car has the trunk popped, which means it was flooded for a storm that's 100 miles offshore. And then across the street from us is another condo complex, and every single car.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where I just realized not just the damage that just happened, right? Like for some people, if you saved for a new car, you just put off your car and you're like, okay, fine, I have to deal with it again. Like some people can handle that. For some people, that's a financial crisis, having to replace their car if that's how they get to work. And that not just personally, but like our entire community lost their car. So now if I want to go buy a new car, I better go really fast to the dealership that's 40 minutes away where they have new cars that weren't damaged and bring them out here. And just to realize some people were like, I bought a new car last month and now my car's totaled. And just the sheer volume of waste of like, this would have been a perfectly good car. This car could have gone for 20 more years and now it's brackish water, flooded, no good. And you're just like, wow, like that waste is just exponential. And then, okay, 2 weeks later, another storm came. And that's how we got flooded out of that condo. We had it was just storm after storm after storm. And this area still hasn't recovered. And you're just kind of like bracing for the next one and realizing that there's nobody in a leadership position who is really making the changes needed to be like, hey, what are we going to do so that when another storm comes, we're all better prepared? What are we going to do to make sure that if somebody wants to live right on the beach, it's beautiful, but guess what? Like you're taking on a lot of financial risk. Let's have a conversation about that before you buy it, because you're probably going to lose everything. You're probably going to lose your car. You're going to lose it. Like, do you have enough to buy extra cars just randomly every year?
And so it seems like to me, one of my questions is about, did you have a realization moment and then a grieving period? Because there's sort of processing and, oh God, okay, so we need to change our expectations for the future. But it sounds like just as an author business in the climate change mode, you're kind of like, okay, very leader oriented, very community facing, and like trying to help people, trying to like change how you think about decisions, financial decisions, etc. So
it's always been like in my mind that like climate change is happening, or the way people need to interact with their environment, and just be more mindful of like, hey, like this could XYZ could happen in my region, and like what could that be? And even launching Interview with a Van Lifer, which came out 3 years ago, the week it launched, I'm like waiting for my package of books from Ingram Spark. I'm so excited. I'm going to launch it. And we had to evacuate for a storm. So I was like, I wrote climate fiction and now we have to evacuate. So like,
that was following me whole.
Yeah. So I was like, I shouldn't write about the climate anymore. And then I did. And then we have more storms. And my husband's like, please stop.
He doesn't think it's correlated, does he?
It's one of those things where like, I'll just write one line in a book and then something will happen. And like, he always gets to read it first. And something will happen in the news. He's like, stop it now. I'm just pulling in from the environment and what I see happening.
Interview with a Van Lifer is playing on the Interview with a Vampire sort of pun there. So that's fun. And I was surprised at the voice, because it's a very neutral journalistic voice for this novella. So I don't know what Heifer is like, but that's your other sort of focused
Yes.
book, right? So
Yes.
is it a similar journalistic voice, or is it more like
No.
fiction third person?
No, it is very, very voicey, I would say. So hold up. So heifer, which translated into French is Janice. So this was the book. I know you mentioned I went like querying when I was writing it, and I was thinking, who reads this? I was like, well, this kind of feels like a very voicey, like book clubby book, and book clubby books aren't usually self-published books. Like they usually need to like come through the traditional route. So I was like, okay, I have to go get an agent. I got an agent. We did get a book deal in French.
Awesome.
So currently, Janice is available in France. The French, they just have really good taste, you know?
Yeah.
But this is very voicey. This is very
Um,
toxic girl bosses
hmm.
towards the end. So it's set in 2070. So it's set into the future, but there has been a climate induced famine. And the only earth resource that has not been fully exploited yet for food is human milk.
Ah, okay.
Yes. So we have the like girl bosses who are like, yeah, like I'm so great at this, babe. Like you should join. Da, da, da. And then like you have all the other things going on and like just the true, what if we took capitalism to the nth degree? And
Hmm.
then that's what you get.
Scary. Yeah.
Scary. So
Scary.
yeah, this is not at all neutral. And when I was writing interview with a van lifer, I wanted it to sound like that neutral journalistic take because I just had in my mind, I was like, this would be a very interesting, like, mockumentary, like Atlantic article. And obviously, whenever you're reading those, like, they're going to highlight whoever they're interviewing in a positive light, but they're still going to talk about, like, but you're not doing this. And you're also been criticized for this. So take what you will. So I wanted it to have that feel specifically.
Hmm.
Um, but I am not neutral on on climate change, but
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah. It's a unique opportunity to use something that is like trending like every year for 20 years now, it would seem, vampires, but then also present them as real people with goals and like people who have adjusted to their changing times and catastrophic,
Mhm.
you know. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Just wanted to say hello. Eva is here in the chat pumping
Eva,
out your social links. So Instagram, if
thank
you are
you.
on Instagram, there we go. And Cat Paw is here. They asked where in the States are you? And I supplied that. Florida.
Yeah.
Congrats on
Florida.
your yeah, Emma Bennett.
Oh,
Hello.
Emma. Hi.
So we got some writers in the chat. Awesome. Um, what about people who seem to you like they also have their, rose tinted glasses off and realistic lens on in terms of looking for solutions, either for Florida, your community, or like
Mhm.
the national stage, like nonprofits that are particularly good. Is there anyone
Mhm.
who has delivered information to you in like a reasonable, non-panicky, like this is the important information type of way that you would recommend that you trust?
Yeah, I think my husband and I, we got involved in a lot of like more like financial, like personal finance meetups. And that was how we actually found a lot of people who were into like permaculture. There's a lot of crossover there with minimalism and kind of saying like, okay, well, like we want to, save our money. We want to be good with it. And then also people being like, well, one of the best ways to save money is to just not spend it. And like, here are some great resources for buy nothing groups, for upcycling, for things like that. And you realize like, oh yeah, like I don't need to go and source everything new. And I find that more close knit community being the best source of information and resources. Like when somebody understands, oh, you're interested in this, but you might also be interested in this, that kind of helps to spread the word about these different resources that are available. And also just having that community wealth. So one of our friends in the permaculture space, Laura Oldani, she talked about all the different kinds of wealth, right? And we hear the term wealth, we think money, right? We think money in the bank, mansions, all that. But she talks about like time wealth. Like, do you have control of your time? And also that societal wealth, like societal interpersonal capital. And those things that when, these large climate catastrophes happen, like that's who you call on to be like, hey, I literally need a place to stay tonight because our HOA has cut out all of the moldy drywall. And we found out at 4 p.m. this was happening. So I need a place to stay right now. I will find a place tomorrow, but tonight I need a place to stay.
Yeah.
And so
Talking about in-person meetups?
yeah, so we used to go to a lot of in-person meetups. I think now that we have our daughter, we've been a bit more timid to go because we're just like, she's an only child, she's a toddler, life is all about her. So it's been a little bit harder. But yeah, in-person meetups can be a great source of just connecting with people and building that social capital of
Mhm.
like, hey, I've made friends, and oh, like we're also talking about, yes, permaculture or what we can do like climate security in our neighborhood, but we're
Yeah.
also talking about the books that we like and this funny show, and hey, do you have this recipe? And like you're just building those more genuine connections. And yes, maybe it started with that one common point of interest and action, but you're going to find you have other
Right.
things to
You're
build
knitting
too.
together in multiple ways. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, permaculture in a group of adults sounds like a perfect activity for a toddler to stay quiet and restful and yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Um, Excellent. Uh, One of the things that I've noticed and have tried to balance out is that I, in the pandemic, got really focused on online community and it was like a lifeline and
Mhm.
sort of just very much deteriorated any of those real in-person links. And so I've had to forge them at like my FYP
Mhm.
brick by brick, like one of those things kind of going, oh yeah, this is how you human, it was very weird to realize that I had, like part of me had shriveled up that much and then realized
Mhm.
that like exercise these muscles and get back out there. Yeah.
Same,
Yeah.
same.
So
Yeah.
trying to get both because I think both give you flexibility and resilience in different ways. But yeah, definitely in person. Oh, Cat Paw says, having lived across the water from Florida in Quintana Roo for almost 20 years, I certainly notice weather changes, and that's a short time for so much change.
Mhm.
That must be on the east coast of Mexico.
Correct.
Yeah, I think they're on the well, I don't know where they are. I don't know where the
If they're not on the peninsula, then they should be just west of it. But I know Quintana Roo is one of the states in Mexico, so I know I visually picturing it across the Gulf.
yeah,
Yeah, it's been very interesting, and I think we are halfway through October, so we have 16 more days of hurricane season, and knock on wood, we'll be good.
oh, okay. I mean,
So,
can you really rely on the season markers anymore? No. So, like, yeah,
not particularly. I think this
like,
year
hold on to your seat as you
yeah.
go forward, yeah.
Let me hold on to hope. That we'll be done. Yucatan Peninsula, yes.
Okay,
Yep.
near the top. Thank you.
Yep.
Excellent. Um, where do you think the climate crisis has hit the people you interact with the most? You mentioned storms, intensity, and obviously like life planning and paying for things and
Mhm.
waste. Is there any way it affects the people that you have in your publishing career that you've noticed?
I think in terms of publishing, I think I started out and I was like, I'm only gonna do ebooks because I'm gonna save the trees. That didn't work because people wanted
Kudos. Hey, kudos. Well, I mean, yeah, I didn't start
weird.
that.
And of course, like I was a nobody author. Like nobody knew who I was. So people were like, "Well, I want a physical book," and I was like, "Okay, I don't have that." So I am very grateful to have print on demand with self publishing. That truly, like, the book is not created unless somebody wants it. It's not just sitting in stock
Right.
and things like that. I think that's very helpful and beneficial. I think in terms of as it relates to publishing, I think just in general, like even people that I know who don't live in Florida, who don't live, in Colorado where you have the wildfires or any of these other very climate disaster prone areas, I hear people all the time just talking about like, well, insurance rates are skyrocketing. I'm like, yes, because insurance companies are having to pay out so much. And so what was once a Florida only problem of like only so many carriers will write here, so many other states are starting to see that. And that's a big financial impact, right? Because if you can't get homeowners insurance policy, you might be able to get a mortgage. And if you can't get a mortgage and you can't buy the house, and then, okay, so I have to save up and pay it. Like it's kind of this all the way down ripple effect where the disasters that are happening in my local community and that are happening right now in Alaska and that have happened in California and Colorado are now impacting everybody. It's everybody's business.
Yeah.
And so that is something that's going to be interesting to see how that just impacts how our society is built right now. Like so much is propped up on real estate and so much of that is propped up on insurance.
Right.
Um,
It's
so
just
I don't
very
want to
just
catastrophize,
kind
but
of
it seems bad.
Like it's like black magic to me. I don't
Yeah.
understand the underwriting business, even though my sister works in it. So I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. I my very first job out of college was as an insurance agent. And so it was very interesting to kind of know enough now. Like I only worked in it for a year, so I feel like I still remember enough to be a little dangerous. Like I can put the details in my books,
Right.
but it's enough where I'm kind of like, this is bad.
Yeah.
This isn't good. Um, so that is one way that I see it impacting people, not just in like the bookish communities, but just like, friends that I have back in Pennsylvania, back in New Jersey, where they're not getting, I think this week they maybe got some bad flooding. There was a storm that kind of skirted up the coast, but they don't get it nearly as frequently as we have down here, but they're feeling the financial effects of it too. And that whole domino starts to
Well,
fall.
yeah, depending on where they are in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, I would say that's also the data center capital issue. Their utility rates are going up. So not just insurance, it's leaking into other things. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
What about the emotional side? So
Mhm.
we're over here dealing with all these things from all sides and trying to like manage our internal emotions and sort of make decisions based on the new changing landscape. What about dealing with the people who are not on the same page? And like I have realized that a lot of the issues we're facing in our polarized political landscape
Mhm.
are denial. And I feel like there's definitely things I have blind spots on and I'm in denial on, and
Yeah.
there's definitely things that I see other people in. So,
Yeah.
have you seen that, like, stop progress or, like, stop your community building efforts in any way? What's your take?
Yes and no. I think I've done a good job cultivating friendships with people who are like-minded, which is good in some ways, but also not good. It is good to hear different opinions and different potential solutions to problems when people are willing to agree on the problems.
Yeah.
I think one thing that is really tough is when you see people who are directly impacted by the storms and like literally paying the costs out of pocket, but then they're very blindly following somebody who says, well, this problem was caused by XYZ person. I'm like, well, this problem was actually caused by decades of inaction that
Right.
like we've had the studies for years and nothing's been done. I don't know what could have fixed this specific problem for you, but like this person is trying to distract you over here with all these other problems because they don't want to focus on fixing this or preventing this from happening again. And maybe the other candidate isn't doing that either, but like
Right.
it's very interesting to me how in our society what we're clashing against is about stuff that doesn't it matters, but it doesn't matter as desperately as when people are like my not just my home was washed away, my entire community was just washed away.
Mhm.
That is a massive problem. And then because it's just been ignored, it's been exacerbated. So I think some of the ways that I try to protect my sanity is that I will write about it
There you go.
so that all of that anger and frustration I feel goes somewhere and it doesn't just on social media or online. Um, and then, writing something like Heifer was very dark. It's very dark. Um, I
Yeah.
talked about my books as if they were like chocolate. And I was like, this is like 90% cocoa. It's dark.
That's gonna make you gag a little bit as it goes down.
If you're not used to it, you're gonna go, I need some milk. And that's what I wanted. I wanted this to be like a little bit in your face of like an eco thriller. So then after that, like I know I mentioned I'm now writing romance. I was like, I needed for my mental health to write something that was light and happy. And the bad guys are clearly bad guys, and the good guys are actually good guys, and
Yeah.
they get the bad guys in the end. And the guy gets the girl, and like all the good things happen because I needed to still have that hope that when enough people come together and can very clearly point out like that's bad, we should not do that, that you can actually make a difference. So that is going to be visible in my romance debut. It's a sports romance spy thriller sports romance that's coming out next fall. It's called Fake Out Make Out, and it is a little funny and a little quirky and still some of the same voice that you're going to get from my other books about you know the environment that we live in is still going to be there, but it's going to be in a more milk chocolate package.
Got it.
It's going to
Okay,
be
that's a
it's going
great
to be
way.
a Reese's peanut butter cup. It's
Yeah,
going to be some
yeah.
M&Ms.
I went to the co-op the other day and for the first time saw that in one of their bins they had like pure cocoa paste and pure cocoa not powder, but blocks of like just cocoa dust in plates, right? In little like terracotta tiles. And I was like, oh, well, I have to try that. And I took a bite and I was like, oh, of course, it's not going to taste like chocolate. It's like 100% chocolate. So I know exactly what you mean. That was only yesterday. And my memory is very fresh.
Yeah.
Alan is here. Hello, Alan, and has a question. Are heat and health impacts also on the rise? Yes, or more noticeable, as well as increases in storms. So obviously this is going to be localized, I think. So what's your experience in Florida?
So what's interesting for me, and I've talked about this quite a little bit on my channel, but definitely my newsletter. So I have 2 autoimmune conditions. And I was noticing last summer, I was in the middle of a really bad flare. And so because we live in Florida, one of the biggest dangers that every homeowner, every property dweller has is mold, is keeping the mold out. Like the air here is moist. It's very humid. You Even on a day when it's not too hot, you probably still need to have the air conditioning running at least on low just to keep the mold from forming. And so when water does get in from massive storms, that's a big issue. And I was starting to have all these symptoms. And in the back of my mind, I was like, I've heard some people in our condo kind of complain about mold before, but I haven't seen any in our unit. And I was like, I wonder if some of my health issues are related to mold. And like going to my doctors and being like, could you test me for this and that? So it's very scary. We live in a different place now. I'm seeing a better doctor. I'm on good medicine. So my health issues are under control at the time that we're recording this. So that's very good. But I have seen issues with people where, they're just trying to survive in the heat and it's very expensive. And so then it's like, okay, well, I can turn off the AC and try to do what we call a swamp cooler, which is a bucket of ice and igloo cooler. Let that cool your body. But then, okay, well, what's going to come from any mold that comes up? What's going to come from just the heat, and it impacts medications. And then if you have to evacuate and you need to evacuate with all of your medical devices and all your medicine and things like that, that can become really challenging. So it's not good, Alan.
Cat Paws had some of those same problems in the recent past and possibly continued. But it's, I think, a type of complex problem that inevitably attracts overlapping problems. So it's not just the heat and the humidity that goes up, it's the health impacts that are also exacerbated by that. And then the medicine that you can't get because of our healthcare system. And then the no notice because there's no warning system, and that worry, it's all together. So fun.
And that's why I write.
Yeah.
This is how I am dealing with this existential crisis.
Right. Mold situation. I love my dehumidifier. Yes. I think for space reasons, pick whether I have a HEPA air filter or a dehumidifier. And in Portland, it does get humid, but not like Florida humid. So I went with the filter because I have cat allergies and a cat. So, there's didn't know that before I got the cat. So unfortunately I found out, and then he's already a good buddy, so he's not leaving.
Yeah, he's cute.
Bean's a cutie. All right, what about other types of solution prompters? One of my other questions was about other types of social movements that might seem similar. If you've seen other people who do not only community discussions, but also trying to motivate other people to act, for boycotts or for changing, your thermostat, things like that. What other movements seem to have worked or taken the right approach in your mind?
I really like local Buy Nothing groups. You can easily find them on Facebook if you're on Facebook, and just say Buy Nothing group Portland, or even just very specific to your community within there. What's really great is that it seems like you're just well, I'm just buying nothing. But what's great is that you're finding a way to recycle something within your own community. And because then you're not going and buying something brand new and making more things on the shelf, okay, so you are saving. Your neighbor is not putting something in a landfill. And then when you're done with that item, you pass it on to the next neighbor. And so I think it's a much more symbiotic way and a much easier way for people to reduce their consumption, reduce waste that's going into landfills, to be more mindful about what they're bringing into their home, and therefore sending those kind of more like capitalism triggers of like, I'm not buying this anymore. I don't need to buy it because I can get this from my community. I can source it from my community. And hopefully then cutting down on extra production, extra shit, like all kind of that small movement can make a big impact. I really love Buy Nothing groups for that. I would say if you have a permaculture group in your area that meets, they're probably going to be hanging out on your Buy Nothing page. But there's a lot that's really positive there. And even though it feels really small and really hyper local, that's probably going to be where you feel like you're making the best impact. Because if you try to bite off the whole, like one little piece of the whole big global problem, you're going to feel like I did nothing, you know, versus if you're actually within that hyper local group, you're probably going to feel more impactful. And there's also time banks, is another one that I've heard of through Buy Nothing groups, where it's almost as a community, you say, hey, like I'm really good at tutoring for piano. I'm going to offer these services. And so because I gave 3 hours of piano tutoring lessons, I now have 3 hours in the time bank, and I can use that from, maybe there's a local PR specialist who's going to help me with a press release for something for an hour. And so that's another way where you're using that local economy. You're getting to know people and your community, and you're giving to them, and they're giving to you. And that kind of, again, it builds that hyper local community and that focus on like, well, what can I give? Even if I feel like I don't have any money to contribute to a nonprofit, or I don't have the time to get up first thing in the morning to do a local highway cleanup, but you know, I have time in the evening, I can do this. So I think that's a good way just to get involved in your community, and to kind of get that symbiotic. We don't have to work within this existing system that kind of exploits us. We can kind of help each other out. And I think even though that may not seem like, well, how does that directly help climate? I think it does, because then instead of constantly buying something new, you know, leveraging all the online AI stuff, like you're just going to this hyper local community. And I think that's really beautiful. And I think it helps.
Yeah. And isn't it sort of odd that we're in a position that the less mindful thing to do is to go out and spend hard-earned money? You know, like instead of going to a neighbor saying, hey, do you have this baby thing that I'm going to need for like 6 months? So I don't have to like make a new one to be created in the world, rather than like, our instinct is now honed, is now trained to like perpetuate the machine. But that's my framing. Just definitely say
absolutely. We were very lucky to have so many people in our direct network who had just had a baby or were just done having kids, and they're like, please take my stuff. And I was like, thank you. I do not want to have to go and buy any of this. Thank you. And we've been passing it on. And like, I think that's really beautiful. And obviously certain things they get too stained. Like, okay, like I can let that go. But for all the stuff that isn't too stained and too well loved, happy to pass that on to the next person so that it can keep being used.
Yeah. And time banking as a phrase is new to me. Like I think that's probably more of my concept of a barter economy. But I mean, the names are changing, and you need to know the names to be able to search it and find the people who are doing the thing. So that's helpful. That's useful. Yeah. Let's see. Climate challenges in your fiction. Maybe some that you've read about. Is there any that you've read about that inspired you or that you thought were really well done that you'd like to recommend in terms of climate fiction?
So I think the first like true climate fiction, as it would have been defined, that I read was Ian McEwan's Solar. And it was very like going around the topic, right, of solar energy, renewable energy, and all the things that are happening with the people. I really enjoyed Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. And what was interesting is after having read it years later, I heard somebody say, well, that was climate fiction. And I was like, oh, it was. Because all the things in that story started out from an ecological disaster. And that's why the birth rate was declining, and that's why there was such a limited livable space. And I was like, oh yeah. So I really enjoyed that. I also really enjoyed The Great Transition by Nick Googans Fuller. He has 2 last names. They're in one of those 2 orders. I really, really enjoyed that one. And then Camp Zero, I also really enjoyed. So there's been a lot of really great recent cli-fi books that have come out that I've enjoyed reading, and really, I find that they all end on a bit of a hopeful note,
Hmm.
which is kind of necessary after, like, getting into the, like, "Oh my gosh, this is happening," and then you're like, "I need some hope. I
Because
just need
there's a lot of books that might be, categorized as cli-fi because they start with the premise of a dystopia brought about by human, incompetence in the climate change realm, but I don't think it can be categorized as that because the main thrust is, something other than people coming together to address that crisis. So, what do you think, is different? Because I think the dystopia has very much taken off because that's people's mood, and the difference between that vibe or writing, style and, climate fiction. Is it the intent of the author? Is it, like, the stylings or, like, the marketing?
I think it's just a new way to categorize it. So when I was looking at just the definitions for climate fiction, it's that like something related to the climate is pivotal to the plot. So whether it is that's how the dystopia came about, whether it's surviving a storm that has intensified because of climate change or things like that, that it is somehow all these characters are impacted because of it, and it's their actions stem because of that. And so it's very broad, and so therefore a lot of things can be reclassified in there, and I think that's a good thing because we can't just say, okay, this very niche subset of sci-fi or speculative fiction is sci-fi and it has to only have this, and therefore only people who want to read it will read it. It's nice to think that some of this can trickle in to the romance realm and trickle into romantasy and trickle into historical fiction because we've actually been dealing with this for a while.
Yeah.
And kind of see how it can trickle in elsewhere where somebody's like reading a book and they're like, I think this is about climate change.
Sneak it
You
in.
know what? I actually noticed something similar last week, and oh my gosh, I do not want to end up here. So I think it's a good thing. And one thing I always try to take away from, why do I write? Why do I do this? And taking away the ego and all the things like what does good literature do? Is it necessarily supposed to inspire and educate? And I think that's very important for it. But I think at the base level, it is supposed to be a way to document this time that we're living through,
Right,
even in fiction, even though it's not nonfiction, like it's not fact, it is still true to how we are living now and the things we are feeling and experiencing now. And so, whether that is through climate fiction that is hopeful or climate fiction that is dystopian and not
right.
hopeful,
Yeah, that's a good point.
this one, it is still representative of the time that we are living through. And that is important for generations to come to be able to look back and say, wow, okay, like they might look back in the history books and be like, what were they doing? Why weren't they doing anything? But then they can look back in the literature record and see all these books that are out there of like, no, people were aware and people were not happy with the inaction and they just did not know how to get past the BS of the politics that's going on that is
Right,
focused on everything but what's really impacting people day to day.
right, how to redistribute the power so that people can hear. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, okay.
Sorry.
No, 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 I had a question and then I just forgot it. I'm gonna read out Libro's comment instead. Imagine everything that had to occur for life as we know it to exist on Earth. Third planet from the sun, with the moon affecting seasons, an asteroid destroying most dinosaurs, ice ages, recovery, then humanity. Yeah,
Mhm.
we're very unique. Yep, yep.
Yeah, it is amazing, and I'm planning on writing, my next book after I write this fun romance that I'm currently working on, to go back and do a very true, climate fiction book. It's actually gonna be more of like an only murders in the building type mystery that happens in between 2 massive storms, that kind of impact this building, but, kind of with that idea in mind is that, like, this planet has survived so much, and the planet, the actual, like, structure of it will survive us. It's just how long will we get to survive if we continue to kind of ignore some of these bigger problems.
Right.
Yeah.
There will be pockets of us, but, like, our civilization, is it just gonna disappear? Are we gonna leave our, thumb drives for people to try to
Yeah, to sort through.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's frustrating and it's scary just to think about sometimes of just like, "Hey, guys, like, pretty soon it is going to be hard to make food. It is going to be very
Yeah.
difficult to find good food. And the people who currently are the haves are going to very quickly find themselves in the have not category when it comes to some of these basic needs if we don't kind of get our act together as a group.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. It came back to me, the thought. So
Mhm.
what I was going to just push you on the dystopia question, because like I think of the big blockbuster movies. I think it's called The Day After Tomorrow, the one with Jake Gyllenhaal,
Mhm.
like New York freezes
Yeah.
over and they're sitting in the library, right? And I think that movie doesn't feel like it's about a climate apocalypse. It feels like it's about a tough guy going out and like doing the right thing. And so
Yeah.
what I feel like is they've used a premise that is real and then
Mhm.
introduced like the same tropes and like character arcs that we're used to in the time before, and I feel like that does a disservice to getting the word out about, no, this is a
Yeah.
potential in the next 60 to
Yeah.
100 years, you know, like I don't know
Yeah.
if I'm saying, but
Or, I mean, for people who are well read on the topic, they're going to be like, yeah, that didn't do enough. But for people who have been in the black mirror suction hole of social media and they're just not seeing it, right? That's not coming up in their news sources. It's not coming up on their algorithm. If that is a way for them to be like, hey, that would be bad. If that is a way to introduce it to somebody who's been otherwise not exposed, I think that's a positive thing. So yeah, I think each person, depending on where they are in learning about this and understanding it, is going to need a different dosage of new information, right? And for somebody who is just starting out, just learning
Mm.
the first letter, that might be hunky Jake Gyllenhaal, might be up for them,
Yeah.
you know?
Uh, Excellent. Okay, so Cat Paw says climate fiction that is hopeful. They have a recommendation which I have not read, but I've heard from them before, and I really like Amanda Scott. Any Human Power just came out last year, I think, from Amanda Scott. Her
Okay.
group of writer colleagues are working on more, like how we can get ourselves out of this, which is excellent. Um, Amanda Scott wrote the Boudica tetralogy in the 2000s, like early 2000s,
Okay.
just like how Dune has morphed. So when the first movie of Dune was made, that
Mhm.
adaptation said things about the society in which it was created in the Cold War, et cetera, and the empires, right?
Mhm.
And then the Dune adaptation with Timothy Chalamet has a completely different context. And so it's saying different things and making different choices. So I found
Mhm.
it really fascinating when it was pointed out to me. And I feel like, yeah, Amanda Scott writing about Boudica and the woman warrior in the British Isles uh, during the Iraq War was one thing. Like the Roman invaders and the Iraq War was intense, and then now she started a new thing. So I definitely want to jump on that
Okay.
bandwagon.
Okay. Well, I will definitely check this out because I'm trying to consume all the different cli-fi that comes in. So I send myself little emails with no subject, but just like book recommendations. I've
Really?
been
Okay.
pushing to do this. So that's what I just did. I just shot myself an email with Any Human Power by Amanda Scott. So I will check that out.
Nice. Well, I was just watching was it Biblio Lifestyle? I can't remember. I think it was a new channel that I'm following. And or no, it was Roselle. Roselle Reads. She was saying that she screenshots books that she's interested in and like doesn't have a system for going through them later. And I was like, ding. Same. What are you gonna do with a bunch of like pictures in your photo library? Are you ever gonna go back and look at them and put them on your to read? So now she's directly putting them onto her to read list in Goodreads. And I was like, there's a good solution.
That is. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah. But the emails, if you're on top of your emails,
I
that's
am.
I am not.
I am. I do stand to or now my daughter, she has her little half day school in the morning, and then she does like gymnastics in the afternoon, and that's actually this afternoon. So I'm gonna go and I'll have time while I'm watching her do her little flips, and I'll be like, okay, now add this to
There you go.
Goodreads.
There you
Okay,
go.
good enough, honey.
Were you inspired by Soylent Green for Heifer? Is that
I
what
was not completely. Um, I I think I saw the movie adaptation that was made in the 70s. I think I saw it when I was in my teens. Um,
I never
so
saw it. I just
I
heard
was
about it. So
yeah, I
don't
was
spoil it for
definitely
me.
I was definitely aware of the concept that was in there,
Yeah.
and I was definitely aware of other books that kind of took this feminist dystopia take, and I made a point to reread them, to read up on them because I wanted to make sure what are the conventions that need to be in here, and also what are the things that I do not want to repeat.
Right.
Um,
Good.
and so, yeah, the idea for Heifer really spawned from when I was nursing my daughter, being in like the mom's Facebook group of just like, what do I do? And how do I handle this problem? Or what about this kind of infection? And da, da, da. And then there would be women who are like, well, I have so much extra. And I was like, I have so much extra. I'm making soap and I'm making jewelries to sell. And I was just like,
Oh my gosh.
isn't that crazy that our society is so
Yeah.
capitalist that it's like anything extra that our body has produced for our children that we're like, we should find a way to sell it somehow. And I was like, oh, that's an idea.
Mm.
And kind of like thinking through all the different ways that like society would try to police that, the ways that people would try to make regulations around it, people would make businesses around it. And that is how we ended up with Heifer, which is jeans in French.
My goodness.
So yes.
That's much better than Soylent Green. Like,
Yes. No, it is not. Yeah, they don't eat the humans. They're just all,
yeah.
everything's made with human milk.
Oof. Okay. Do you see your romance having little tidbits of climate facts in them? I was going to say one of my recommendations, if you want to write another email to yourself, is Alice Henderson. I don't know if you've heard me recommend her before. She does thrillers where there's like a field biologist out in the wilderness doing a project, monitoring cameras, looking at some endangered species. And then all of a sudden there's like a killer in the woods, and she does it really well. There's so much action, but there's also lots of like scientific knowledge. So
okay, I definitely
Hammerer on one side, like peaceful, gentle, and then there's Alice Henderson on the other side, which is like dun dun dun.
I definitely want to read that. I think at some point in my life I have a volcano book in me. I just don't know what it's going to be about. So I definitely want to read what she's doing.
Wow.
I think for me, some of the romances that I've currently written don't necessarily have the climate touch in there. I think part of the reason why I wrote Heifer and some of the health issues I've been having are all kind of stem back to food and food restrictions, food limitations, and then food insecurity. And that is a result, obviously, of climate, of the times that we're living in. And so that is very much going to be present in Fake Out, Make Out with somebody who has health issues and therefore has to be very limited in what they can eat, which is tough when then if you remove an entire ingredient from your food supply, what does that do? It's definitely going to be present in the book that I'm drafting right now. It was very much present in Heifer. It was all about that food insecurity, the climate fueled famine, and what does society do when there's no dairy?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what was I gonna say? It wasn't about your books. It was about the food thing. Oh, not just the climate change, the scientific events that are creating food insecurity, but also just greed in the system, right? Because obviously it's a distribution problem rather than a capacity problem in many cases. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you solve greed? How do you just slip that into a book? Can I slip that into a romance somehow?
In the book I'm writing right now. Yeah, it's interesting. I wanted to do like the ex like football star romance, but I was like, but he's a multimillionaire, not a billionaire, because there's no good billionaires.
No. Yeah.
I can redeem a lot of qualities
Yeah.
and redeem a lot of red flags in a male character, but that one I probably can't. No.
I'm gonna have to write that. I agree. All right. Well, I'm going to ask if there's any last questions from the audience for MK Williams, our author heroine of the hour. This has been Truth and Reconciliation for the Climate, where we're talking about climate crisis, and especially this year focusing on why it feels like such a cluster, why it feels like it's out of control, why it feels like no one's doing a damn thing about it, and what we're doing in our lives to give us a little hope, and how we're connecting with other people who also are on the same page and finding other solutions. So hopefully this gives glimmers to people out there to help process their own frustration and despair and turn that into like, well, I'm gonna join my permaculture group, or I'm gonna finally try to keep a plant alive over the winter instead of letting it die.
Baby steps.
Baby steps, exactly. And that's exactly what I have in my thank you message. Diversify that reading list and take a tiny step. So, yeah. So thank you, MK, so much for coming on the channel for the
Thank you
series.
for having me. This is really fun.
Oh, Felicia, that's everything. Well, you can always watch the replay and ask questions. And if I get a comment for MK, I will send it on over for her to answer.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, this year and all the years. Yeah, good point. Good point. All right. Well, thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you again soon.
Bye. Thanks for having me.